your regular fix of the best guests from the world of data and analytics. This is The Data Mix with Brian Bouden and George Beaton.
Good afternoon, George.
Good afternoon, Brian.
How are you, my good friend? You all right?
I'm really good. Back after just 2 weeks, just like we said we would be.
I know. Almost like this is a thing, right? So, I hear that your son told you off for not looking at the camera enough, is what you told me before the episode. So, I'm going to be watching yourself now to see
what I'm trying to do. I'm going to try and put my window where I'm looking at where I'm looking at you and our guest as close to my camera as possible.
Yeah,
that's what I tend to do. I look on screen at whoever I'm speaking to.
That's what I do. I'm going straight down the barrel. But let's work out our presenting issues as we go here. It's amazing to be back on with you, mate. Every 2 weeks, here we are now with the Data Mix. And again, if you've been following our promos, you know we've got an amazing guest on there to start with. But let's get a few of the formalities out of the way, George. It's been a couple of weeks, and we had an amazing response from our last episode with Brendan Grady. And because we had such an amazing response, it's only fair for us to, speak to you guys, our wonderful audience again. If you like what we do, if you watch our show, whether you download us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, you watch us on LinkedIn Live, please, fingers crossed, give us a wee review on one of those platforms. I think our Spotify reviews went pretty crazy after the last episode, George. I think we got up to like 10 or 11. So please keep at it, guys. We really love your support. Any comments, George?
Yeah, it means we can get the best guests on. The more popular we are, the more people want to come and talk about what they do, which is exactly what we want to share with our audience.
Super stuff. So we've now bought enough time for you to check out those QR codes. Hopefully you gave them a little bit of a scan. But look, George, I think it's time to get into the show for real. So another few comments that we had on the show last week is the data fix really went down as a cool segment. When that's good because it's part of our show moving forward. So it's great to hear that. So shall we move into the data fix part of the show, mate?
Let's do the data fix, yeah.
Oh, let's do it then. Right, okay. Let's get this coordination going. So we've got the data fix, and here's your little wind up here. So the data fix is our segment where we talk about some of the big things that are happening in tech right now, George. So why don't you take it away for us, mate? What's been happening in the world of tech over the last few weeks?
Well, Brian, I don't know if you've been a bit like me, but in the corporate world, I've been in London for the last 2 weeks, and it's just been wall-to-wall Christmas party. Every pub you go into in the evening has got a cordoned off area and there's a Christmas party going on. And we both had our little data mix Christmas party. At least we had some Christmas mac and cheese in your local last week, which was very festive. But we're not the only ones. I think it's worthwhile talking about OpenAI because over the last week and a bit, OpenAI has had their 12 days of shipmas, which I thought was quite fun. Mm-hmm. And during these 12 days, they've been dropping quite a few goodies. A lot of these goodies have been teased over the whole year. But a couple of things that we got were, for example, they've got their O1 full version of their reasoning model is out, which I haven't been able to play with yet because I'm not a subscriber. I subscribe to Claude, which is Anthropic's version, which is also pretty cool.
How much is a sub, mate? Do you know?
£18 a month. Okay. In UK money, I think. What about $20, $22? That. So I mean, it's worth it. It's worth it. Mm-hmm. But a couple of interesting things that OpenAI dropped. Their O1 reasoning model. They have a £200 a month now subscription. Sorry, I think that's $200 a month subscription. That was something that was teased earlier on in the year. I think it was met with amazement and derision. Nobody would pay that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
But people are, which is interesting. And they also dropped a Santa voice. So you can have OpenAI in Santa mode now, which is quite fun. So that's open to anybody, even if you're not paying, and it is quite cool. But one of the biggest things that they dropped was Sora. So Sora was something that they teased way back in February this year. This is their video generating tool. So you can use a text prompt to generate a video, and that is cool. Now, again, I haven't played with it, but I've seen some of the outputs from it, and it's amazing. I think it's coming out with mixed responses, partly because I think if you are in the graphics creating industry, you're wondering, is this going to impinge on my work now? But something that's been doing the rounds on the internet is a Coca-Cola short. So that's several little videos stitched together, made entirely from AI, and it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And I believe, Brian, we've got that available.
We actually do. Yeah, we actually do have that, and we've got one of the 3 shorts here. It's called Unexpected Santa, and I thought it might be worth just playing it to the channel, actually, just so we can have a look at it and maybe have a quick chat about where the great parts and where the parts that need work are.
Yeah.
Should we do it?
I think we should.
All right, man, let's do it. Right, thank you so much for that intro, mate. Right, so let's play this, and we'll just let everyone enjoy this. It's Unexpected Santa, created by Real Magic AI. So, I'll have a quick starting point here, George. So, there's one big thing I noticed on this to start with, and that's when the Coca-Cola trucks were coming along. 2 of them had the Coca-Cola signage that was really quite good quality, but the middle truck had it all blurry, and I don't know why, but it really just totally stuck out to me. But overall, the other thing I noticed was that the clips are very short. So the camera cuts are very short, almost like it can't create the sort of 5 to 10 seconds in a row. So those were a couple of things that I mentioned, but overall, pretty decent, I would say.
It is pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, I was also impressed. You're right to pick out the very short clips. So about 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds was about as long as each clip was. And on the tech side of things, well, I think AI still has problems with text in images. But overall, I mean, we don't know how long it took them to produce this. The continuity is not bad. If you think each 1.5 second clip, they're going to have to reprompt, and they're not going to get the continuity from the previous segment either. So, it's not bad. Do I think Hollywood needs to worry right now? Not quite. But it's kind of moving in that direction, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I think it's a pretty impressive go, and I'm pretty sure we'll get our guest definitely to have a comment on Unexpected Santa as well. I think that's a must. But not a bad first effort, I would say. Really quite enjoyed watching it, and it felt quite natural. But it'll be interesting to hear from our audience what you thought about that as an AI generated ad, and whether it cut the mustard for you. If your M&S ad came up on the TV. Sorry, actually, for a global audience, Marks and Spencer's is a very British brand that traditionally gives an advert out every Christmas. But be interested to hear your thoughts. Pop them into the chat if you want to discuss about AI as well. Anything else, George, to cover on this topic, or are we in good shape?
I think while we're talking about video shorts, we should probably say that the data mix is now starting to do 2 or 3 20 to 30 minute shorts. We're just following the trend. We're pushing them out on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. So if you haven't seen these yet, then hopefully they will be coming to your feed in the next few days.
All right, well, that was awesome, and that was the data fix for this week's episode. Thank you very much, George. That was fascinating. I look forward to seeing how that evolves as we start to move on with our tech as well. So, if this was a Christmas dinner, that would be your, like, I don't know, what would be your starter for Christmas dinner?
Prawn cocktail. That's our prawn cocktail.
Prawn cocktail. Well, now we're moving on to the full turkey roast, aren't we? And it's time to get our main guest on for the day. And our guest today is the wonderful Rosanne Werner. So let's see if we can switch her on. Look at that, first time.
Hey. Hi, Rosanne.
Hi, George. Hi, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Rosanne, before we get started anywhere, what did you think of Unexpected Santa? What did you think about it?
I thought it was a really good go at AI. I mean, it's emerging, and the fact that they've been able to create that straight from AI, it's their way of being innovative about the emerging technology. So it was a really good go, and people are talking about it. So that's even better.
Yeah.
And that's good, and I think there's a couple of accompanying ones as well. So it's an interesting watch if you want to go and dig them out on YouTube. But Rosanne, it's wonderful to have you here. We're very excited for you to be here for our Christmas episode. But we are very aware that we've been talking to you a lot, but maybe the whole world doesn't know who you are. So why don't you give us a little bit of an intro and let us know who you are, what you've been doing?
Sure. So my name's Rosanne Werner, and I'm the CEO of Accelerate IQ. So we help companies with the data and digital enablement. So it's all about data and AI fluency, habits and behaviours, which is the foundation of mindset and culture. So we do this through a people-first approach. So how the brain changes and learns with information, but then also behavioural principles such as like social learning and habit formation. Mm-hmm. So I had spent my last 10 years prior to setting up this company at Coca-Cola. So it's a very, very big passion of mine being at Coca-Cola for the last 10 years. And I've been doing finance transformation prior to that. So I'm a chartered accountant by trade, and through finance transformation leading into data and digital transformation.
Well, that's a great introduction and a great place to start here. And I think the part that's really, we'll dig into a lot of that, but the part that's really interesting for me is the behavioural science part, right? Because, George, it's not something that we've attacked in great amount of detail so far, right? The behavioural science part of
not at all.
Not just learning about AI, but the culture within organisations and how that all plays a part. So interesting stuff, right?
Yeah, and maybe we'll get some answers as to why whenever I go into an organisation and try and teach data literacy, I feel like I'm banging my head off a brick wall.
It seems to be that way sometimes, depending on which organisation you go into. But look, following on from the sort of look, we make no bones about it, right? We picked the Coca-Cola theme, and we picked the video, and we knew you were there, and it's Christmas, and it all works together, right? So I think this is like a good place to start, right? I think, Rosanne, you said by your own admission that you spent quite a bit of time with Coca-Cola. So do you have any anecdotes from Christmas time you must have regarding Coca-Cola and what happens inside?
Yes. So Coca-Cola at Christmas time is a really buzzing time. They deck out the whole office with there's like Christmas Santa everywhere. One of the things that is really good that they do in the Coca-Cola office is that they call out office-based staff to help our field sales guys on the ground. So you can imagine Christmas time, it is absolutely manic in there. Coca-Cola products are flying out the door. And so we would go to the local Sainsbury's or Tesco's, Morrison, Asda, and help our field sales teams in making sure that the products are well stocked, they're readily available for consumers on their shelf. So those weeks leading up to Christmas, not only are we being able to bond with the field sales guys, you meet people from outside of your functions. It's a really great way to learn cross-functionally, as well as we're lifting a lot of Coca-Cola bottles, so you get a little bit of workout before your Christmas dinner. And you also hear Mariah Carey on the Christmas stores going on repeat a lot of the time. But it really does give a really good chance for teams across Coca-Cola to learn about the challenges faced by the field sales teams, and then also reflect on what their own processes in the office are like and how they can support the guys on the front line. So it's a really good way, leading up to Christmas, you can really get into the spirit. We all wear our Coca-Cola Christmas jumpers, and it's a really nice way to just kind of spend time with people across different functions.
So my question on that, does anyone try and dress up as the Coca-Cola version of Santa Claus? That's what we really want to know, right? How many Santa suits are kicking around with all that red and white?
Yeah, that's really hard to stack shelves with. You've got this big suit on.
What about you, George? Any requirements for you to know about what's going on in Coca-Cola's culture at Christmas time?
I mean, there is the urban legend that the Red Santa was a marketing thing that came from Coca-Cola, and before that he wore a green suit or a green jacket. Anyway, do you know anything about that, Rosanne? Is that a thing? I mean, we know that Coca-Cola have a very strong marketing department.
Yeah, so Santa came about from St. Nick, which is I think 280 AD, but it's in the 19th century when Santa became red, and that was through a cartoonish, I think his name was Thomas Nast. So that's when he turned up on like US confectionaries and the magazines as Red Santa. But in the 1830s was when Coca-Cola started advertising with their version of Red Santa, and that's when that came through. So Coke didn't create Red Santa, but they started doing the advertising in about 1830s.
Interesting. Okay, well, let's put that one to bed for me.
Well, I think so. And it's, you know what, it's always nice to get something personal from our guests that we would never have known otherwise. So I'm glad that we've now put that myth to bed. I bet it's a super fun place to be at that time of year. So we really appreciate you talking about that as well. Just while we've been chatting, a few things have come in, Rosanne. So we'll just pop these up on the screen to mention them here. We've got hi Adrian, thanks for joining the stream here. But again, going back to I've forgotten the name of the clip already. Unexpected Santa. Again, existing data visualizations as images and modifying them and finding the correct data points. I actually see this one all the time. Whenever you see one of these big billboards that's generated by AI. And George, I'm pretty sure we went through actually a couple of examples where we were looking at AI posters and like just nonsense text on there and pie charts that don't add up and all kinds of things. So it depends what your purpose is, I suppose, right? It's are you just wanting a quick hit of just an infographic that no one's going to pay any attention to, or do you really, if you really need that detail, I think that's where the AI is struggling. And I saw another one this morning of Sora trying to replicate a floor gymnast, and that did not go well. Apparently, that's one of the most complex things to be able to generate. So thanks for chipping in with that, Adrian. And hopefully, Rosanne knows who Ange from AdMaple is, because surely everyone knows Rosanne. It sounds like a Christmas comedy show. Surely everyone knows Rosanne. So,
bless Ange. Thanks, Ange.
So thank you so much, folks, and keep your comments coming in. We'll continue to reference them through the show and have a bit of a chat on with the Q&A with Rosanne at the end. But directing a bit more towards matters in hand. It's lovely to talk about Coca-Cola, but some of the things that you mentioned, Rosanne, in terms of like technology change and the way that technology is changing so fast, and that the companies have to change at that pace as well, right? And there's a lot of challenge there. And I'm sure that I see you write about these things every day on LinkedIn. So what are your opening thoughts on that situation in terms of the rate of technology change?
Yeah, I think there's two key parts in this in terms of how fast the amount of data is growing. So I think from the latest stats, it's like 90% of the world's data has been generated in the last 2 years, and that rate is accelerating. So, but at the same time, people are saying, "Oh, I want more data. I want more data to answer my questions." So there's that bit of, how much data is being generating and sifting through the noise, and then you've got the rate of technology, which is accelerating at a higher pace than what organisations can really absorb it, and that's what they call. It's called a Martech's law. So the way technology is changing so rapidly, it's the pace is accelerating, but then organizations, it takes time to change the way of thinking, and then you're talking about people's behaviors and habits as well, which don't change overnight, and let alone talk about existing structures and processes and the cultural momentum behind it. So it's that gap is getting bigger and bigger.
So Martech's law, I haven't heard of that. Is that a little bit like Moore's law then?
Yeah, so Moore's law is as part, so Moore's law I think is like the transistors improving itself and being more powerful and less costly. So yeah, it's like the technology is it's accelerating really quickly, and then that you've got that gap of technology accelerating, and then organizations are not being able to absorb that change. So you need to be really strategic in terms of what technology tools you're absorbing and wanting to adopt. So it's having that strategy as a choice in terms of what technology you're adopting, and then more importantly, what you're not absorbing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you're not suggesting that we should slow down the rate of data generation more. It's just how we manage it. Is that right?
Exactly. It's choosing what to adopt and making sure that the technology you're adopting solves the real problems you're trying to solve. If you're trying to adopt all the AI tools out there, you're going to end up diluting your efforts too much that you're not actually getting any benefits from it.
Yeah,
I think that's one thing I see a lot of, Rosanne, is technology stack splintering, and especially with pick the newest thing and then start it, don't finish it, and actually leaving behind current relevant projects to dabble in new stuff. And I suppose this is a very general message, right? But just ignoring the baseline in lieu of catching the spike, if you like. And it's quite a difficult one to manage nowadays. And I think it's applicable from both a software and a literacy point of view as well. It's the physical stuff that happens in your organization, but also there's so much to learn, right? And if you don't consolidate that literacy, and whether that's data or AI literacy, and we'll have another topic on this in a future episodes about what the differences between those are. But it's a bit of a minefield, right? So what tips do you have to sort of help to absorb that change effectively? Because part of absorbing is concentrating on core topics, right? So
exactly.
What are some tips you can follow there?
I would say pick out the tools that align with your organization's overall strategy. What are the high impact initiatives that drive the real value, and then go with those ones, and identifying which ones to pursue, which ones to ignore, which ones to park. So and identify those ones that would really solve the real value and the real problems in your businesses. And then I would say then break that down. So you can't adopt everything overnight. So and it overwhelms people as well. So how do you break that down in terms of that incremental adoption? So breaking down the change into manageable chunks so that they can incorporate that into the daily operations. So it's little incremental changes so that they can build their confidence over time, and then learn, and then feedback, and then build their confidence again and learn a bit more. And I would say taking that people first approach in terms of getting diverse and cross-functional collaborations together. So the tools that are being adopted and integrated into processes are fit for purpose for all. So you don't want it to be done for the marketing guys, but then the supply chain guys can't use it. So how do you embrace that change for all in terms of bringing that collaboration together? And then you mentioned it in terms of the employee readiness and the capabilities building side of things. So building the knowledge on what those tools are, but then turning those knowledge into action. So what are they actually doing with it, with the tools, and how are they measuring the benefits from the tools?
That's interesting and quite relatable for certainly the line of work that I'm in, and I know a lot of our listeners, where digital transformation sometimes can be entirely organizational encompassing. So in a sort of private equity arena where an organization has just been acquired, sometimes they will use technology to look for improvements to things like efficiency. But then you've got an entire organization that are going through a change. And there could be a PMO, there could be a project management team doing that. But from your experience, Rosanne, what for these sort of changes that will take an entire department, a function, or even an organization, what sort of timescales might we be talking about, and who should be leading this? Who's sort of responsible for it? And again, what are some tips for success?
Great question, mate. Great question.
Yeah. So you will have a project lead, but it's important that the leadership alignment is there as well. So the message coming from the top in terms of this is why we're adopting the change. This is how it aligns with our strategic goals. But I also feel like you have your champions or influencers that are on the ground that influences their teams to challenge status quo. Why are they doing things that they're doing? Are they embedding the new routines? Are they embedding the new technology? And they're the ones that can influence the people's day-to-day routines and just kind of go tap into that. We talked about that incremental change. So how do you tap into the incremental change of, okay, we're having a team meeting. How do we embrace the new technology in the first five minutes of the team meeting? How do we share the success stories that we've experienced? Kind of generate that pull within the team about what they've been using the tools for, what are the success stories, what are the learnings, to kind of pull everyone else on that journey as well. So that social learning is really important in terms of people learn better in a group. They feel the brains are wired to learn more in a group. So when you're in a group setting, that really helps people with that change, not just by reading about the change or having a learning materials on the change. Is actually going, okay, well, I can see this change in action. I've seen the success stories. How do I be part of this change? So you've got the message from the top in terms of why we're doing it on a big level, and then the educational materials, but then that influencer champions bit. That's a bit that then drives the behaviours into the teams.
I think with that behaviours part, and you actually mentioned this in a recent post as well, was just that chunking methodology of, instead of trying to attack everything as a big, huge problem, the same goes for learning, right? And especially when learning is applied to literacy, it's very difficult for a lot of people to sit down and consume like a 3-day course of how to be data literate. It's almost like self-affecting, or it can be a bit negative in a way, because you're just so overloaded that you come out of it and it's such a theory-based proposition that it really lends itself to be broken down, right, into smaller parts.
Exactly. And there's studies to say that we learn 10% of what we read, so that's only a little small chunk. But then we actually learn like 80% of what we experience and 95% of what we teach others. So there's different types of learning, and you can't. I'm a big rider. I'm a big cyclist, and my little one always goes, "I want to ride a bike," and he needs to go out and ride the bike. I can't just read him a book and expect him to hop on a bike and ride around the park. It's like really getting on, trying it. So you learn by doing a bit of reading, but then how do you then turn that into doing? How do you turn the theory into practice?
Mm-hmm. And that's an important part, right? And especially for data literacy as well. And we talked about, in terms of data literacy, a program can mean a lot of things, right? But that has a lot of advantages, but a lot of shortcomings as well. So what are some of the, because I'm guessing from a culture, a mindset, and a kind of point of view, you probably see a lot of those shortcomings of common data literacy strategies that are out there in companies. So what are some of those that you've noticed, and how can they be improved?
I've been speaking to a lot of data leaders in Europe, in the US, and in Asia, and what I'm seeing is that they've gone through the data literacy programs, and it might be a big e-learning program, but then they've spent the money, but then they're not seeing the change in the behaviours. And this is where you've got that 10% of learning in terms of the reading, but are they actually turning that into day-to-day changes in their behaviours, on how they interact with data, how they understand data, how they interpret data and use the data for their decisions, as opposed to relying back on gut feel. So I led the Data and AI Mindset and Culture program at Coca-Cola, and we were recognised as a finalist in the Data IQ Awards for the best data skills program, and we were also listed in the CIO 100 awards. So what really worked in that program was that there was the learning piece, but then it was the reflection piece in terms of, okay, this is what you've learned. How are you going to apply this into your day-to-day in the next week? And then share back in terms of how you've done it, what are the learnings. Yeah. And then we also had global P2P workshops. So we had about 200 across the world data catalysts turning up in the last workshop on storytelling. And it was about, we learned about the data storytelling module, but these catalyst workshops was, okay, how do we tackle these missions together? And you had people from cross functions coming in, so marketing, talking to supply chain, and you get that real data lineage exposure in terms of, I've got access to this information, this data, or I enter this information in, and actually that's got an effect down the line. So it's kind of that awareness of that data lineage, and that social learning piece of discussing about how they interpret what good quality data is, what practices do they take into account to make sure their data quality is correct. But then also how they use the data for decision making, how they implement the changes within their teams. So it's the learning, but learning by doing, and then sharing those success stories.
Yeah. So you built in feedback then. This was an interactive training. What audience were you selling this to internally? And then can you talk about some of the benefits of upskilling Coca-Cola with data literacy?
Yeah, so we started off with the marketing commercial teams and the supply chain teams. We were like, they're the key engines of Coca-Cola, the ones that sell the Coke and the ones that make the Coke. And we're like they're also big creators of data and big usage of data, and then everyone in between. But the program targeted the data catalysts. So we talked about the champions that influence their teams. So this was like a hymn sheet to give everyone in terms of, okay, this is what we're doing. This is a data strategy. This is how these are the behaviours we want the company to display in terms of how they understand data, interact with data, talk about data, make decisions based on the data, and having that cross-functional interaction as well as different territories across the globe allowed us to view the challenges and the success stories across the different functions. So supply chain might go, well, I had stock the floor interactions with the teams, and we were like, okay, what's the dashboard telling us today? How do we use dashboards to change how we make decisions today? And then the commercial guys would go, okay, well, these are the learnings that you guys are taking place. Maybe I take that back to my teams in a different spin on how to influence my teams. So it was that cross-functional learnings in terms of challenging how people change their behaviours, but then also understanding the data lineages across the different functions. So having that awareness of the data impact down the line or up the line. So it's not so siloed.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you, Rosanne.
I was just going to say that continuity, ironically, after that is very important, but often you see it brought in at a later point during a program, right? You're very much taught the basics or the practical, and then communication is brought in as an afterthought in between departments. So I think you're really right on something there with getting that part in first, so that there's no, you can't just train one part of an organization, then another part, and then another part, and then here's the glue that will stick you together at the end, because it's a house of cards that's built to fall, right? So you get pockets of stuff happening in your organization, but you can't sustain it. So I think what you're saying there is really important.
Yeah, because we get feedback from the data catalyst in terms of, they get to speak to people outside of their teams. So it's like, data is not just within their teams, it's actually a wider organizational, a business initiative.
And just a quick word for the chat as well. We're seeing everything that's coming in there, and we're going to come back to all of it in the QA. So just be patient with us and hang on. There's some great stuff coming in there. So, like, if you nail it down to some specifics, then Rosanne, right, there must be some critical skills that are needed, to make your workforce sort of future ready for this type of, because I think sometimes we forget, right? We've been through a pandemic, and before that there was and a lot has changed with the combination of AI and a pandemic. A lot has changed technology-wise, right? And we need to remember that when we're thinking about the skills that a workforce needs. Even the skills that were needed 5 to 10 years ago pre-pandemic are maybe not quite the same profile as they are now. So what are the things we should be focusing on right now in terms of those critical skills?
I guess what we've seen is, especially with the rise in AI, is sometimes the hard technical skills don't just cut it anymore. You really do need those soft, I call power skills to bridge the gap, and I call them the 5 C's. The curiosity, the creativity, the critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and they're things that I have not seen AI been able to replicate well. Right. And you've got curiosity. So how do we dig deeper into the new and existing data? How do you explore with it? The creativity, how do we do new ways of doing things with the existing data? And especially with AI, what I'm seeing is, the whole traditional way of learning, we're taught what to learn at school. And when AI comes about and people are trying to adopt AI, they're like, well, tell me what to put in the system. And it's like, well, use your curiosity, use your creativity. What would you put in the system? And I think that's something that people are struggling with when it comes to adopting AI. It's really tapping into that curiosity, creativity on how to generate a prompt, how to generate the prompt to get the Coca-Cola truck come through. But I also think when it comes to AI outputs, your critical thinking is really important there. Are we are we critically thinking about the outputs in terms of, is there bias in the output? Is it hallucinating? Is it really AI generated? Does it have AI generated words in there that sounds really, robotic? So I think it's using AI, but having that kind of AI sandwich. So you're like, having your curiosity and creativity, and then you got the AI that generates the output, and then using your critical thinking skills to then, get the best out of AI. And then you mentioned, communication and collaboration. They're the bits that, that human connection and that human communication bit that, gels us all together, that emotional connection that AI is probably not quite able to replicate at the moment.
Yeah. And Rosanne, have you seen organizations now weaving AI training into their data literacy programs?
Yes, but you need to start to do AI, you need to have your data right. So if you have bad data and you put AI on top of it, you get super turbo bad, results. So yes, AI literacy is important in terms of like the cognitive ability in terms of prompting, but also in order to have a really good foundation, you need to understand your data literacy that then feeds into the AI.
Yeah, so it starts with a foundation of data literacy then, on top of good data within your organization, and then after that you can start learning and understanding how to use prompts to get what you need from data.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow, brave new world.
I think, and also I just think having that alliterative methodology as well, I think is like for those who are neurodiverse, I think having something like the 5 C's or something like that you can latch onto is a really important thing, and it shouldn't be underrated because more and more of the workforce are being highlighted as neurodiverse, and that's actually being diagnosed, and it's just a thing nowadays. It may not, and again, I don't even think pre-pandemic or in the last 10 years it was really recognised as this is a genuine part of the workforce. So I think to have anything that you can latch onto with that is super important as well. Is that something that you notice, is that when you have those frameworks, they tend to embed a bit better because of that as well, and having that structure behind it?
Because it's also embracing the personalized, the ability to like personalize the learnings. People learn differently, so and then having those avenues to learn in different manners then allows that kind of like that upskilling to take on a lot faster, and that adoption as a result of it.
Well, that's amazing. I think that's like pretty awesome insights, and I'm just aware that the chat is like blowing up here on the side. So I'm quite keen to give us a bit of time to look at some of those if you're up for it, Rosanne. So let's just have a bit of a recap and Q&A here. So what we'll do is we'll just move down some of the questions, and we've got Joe here to start with. So, and I could have flashed this up quite a lot earlier, but how important would you say data is in the age of AI? And you talked about baselining, but anything more to say on that, Rosanne?
Yeah, so it's in the stage AI. You got to is your data ready? It's not just it's not just the amount of data. It's the quality of the data, and then also have you got the processes in place to do it? So very important. And hi, Joe.
We've got, George, I think you might be interested in this one as well, but again, this one's more on the edge of sustainability, and data needs to be sustainable. So sustainability needs data, and data needs to be sustainable. George?
Yeah. So I listened to a very relevant podcast with the CEO of Scale AI. Scale AI make synthetic data or pull together very clean and very focused data sets for the AI industry. So this is what a lot of the mainstream data models are built on. And we've heard people like, I think Elon Musk said he's built, what did he call it? Colossus. And he was going to have 100,000 GPUs in a data center. And then he said, no, wait a minute, I'm going to have 200,000. Actually, I'm going to have 1 million GPUs in this data center. The point is that I think the limitation is not going to be how many GPUs you can stash into your data center. It is how can you get the quality data to train your models on. That's the limiting factor, and I think that's exactly what you've been saying, Rosanne.
Yeah, and also when when you come across problems, is AI really the right tool for the job? I think you got to understand, you got to understand what the real problem to solve is. And I've seen companies, they build all these AI tools where actually you can probably solve it with, some really simple automations, but they want to just go into the shiny tool box to play with AI, and it's for really finding whether AI is really the tool for the job, and then and then invest in it.
Yeah. Yeah, apologies. I think I completely missed Lisa's point there. She was talking about sustainability in data. So hopefully that sort of tied in. The fact that we've not got at the moment data is the limiting factor within what we're doing here.
Yeah, and we have a few others as well. I'm going to bring up Angie again here at the bottom. So what are some quick win strategies that you've seen work in terms of like bedding in the new system fast? What are the things that we can do to make that work? Not putting you on the spot or anything, Rosanne, but yeah.
I'd say start small, but be strategic in terms of what you're doing. And so we're not overwhelming your workforce at once, but then at the same time you're starting with experimenting, you're starting with the change, you're getting that feedback in a quick manner. And then I always say use your champions and catalysts, because they're the ones that are able to kind of give you the feedback, but then also the microphone of the change into the masses. So it's like start small but strategic, and then making sure you're using your catalysts, your change agents to kind of really ripple that change across the organization. And just make sure you're equipping them with the right tools as well. So the learnings, the always on collaboration, so that that change is more of a pull than a push.
And we've got time for one more, I think, George. And we know Nathan's from the Click ecosystem, so we know Nathan well. Soft skills key for the success of AI in the future. And I think my take on this is that I still see so many people just putting a one-line prompt into ChatGPT and just expecting the answers to pop out. It's still so common, and we all do it, right? We all do a quick hit to see if we can just get a quick answer. But what we're doing is we're misguiding these tools, and we're teaching them to misguide themselves by not giving them. And the data learning process of something like that is an incredibly long period of time and a massive amount of data. So the better, when we start to learn how to prompt AI, that's when we'll see the benefit of AI most, in my opinion. I think we're not quite there yet, but I think that's why having the frameworks is really important, because you really need to stop before you get on your keyboard and start going do into ChatGPT. You really need to think, am I being creative enough with my prompt? Am I being critical enough with the question that I'm asking? Or am I just feeding in a diagram and saying, just give me the solution, ChatGPT? And I do worry about our next generation, about whether their brains are going to work in the same way because of that as well. I think there's a real cognizance issue for the next generation too. So I'd be interested to hear what you think about that, when the cognizance of our younger generation that are growing up with all this tech and how it changes.
Yeah, well, I'd like to probably say one thing in terms of like that prompting side of things. One thing I found really work well is, and I'm experimenting with this, is asking Claude or ChatGPT, like, this is my prompt. Can you tell me what I'm missing to generate a better prompt? And it will go, well, you're missing the tone, or what type of output would you like? And that's kind of helped me then reframe that prompt. So I've been kind of like brainstorming with the AI tools in terms of how I can improve my prompt, and testing with that as well. With the younger generation, One thing I have thought is, we're looking at the Coca-Cola ad before. I find that they are probably more in tune with understanding what is fake and what is not better than what we would be, because they're a lot more exposed to it. And I guess in terms of people can cheat now with their learning styles. So if they want to cheat with AI tools, then they can. And so I think it's really tapping into that kind of curiosity, the creativity side of things that then helps build their learnings on it. But I think if they want to cheat, they can do that now. And AI tools is just going to be another tool for them to go around it in a way. So
yeah. But I guess it was a little bit like, we were told not to use calculators at primary school when I'm going back a long time. But now calculators are allowed in exams. And I think as long as you have what we're testing is do you know under the hood, do you know what you're asking? Ask a better question and you'll get a better answer. And the AI is not, I think, as you said, it's not generating new knowledge at the moment anyway, before it can start running its own experiments. And so staying curious, staying creative, that's got to be part of your keys for success.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And being critical about the results as well, and just kind of pushing that status quo.
I love your point about actually asking it, how would you like me to ask this question better?
Yeah.
And I think, don't miss your C's, George. But yeah, I think that's a great way to sort of finish off here. And I've learned so much in this last I'm looking at the clock, 52 minutes. Wow, it's just zoomed past. But we need to be aware of what's happening. We didn't manage to get through all the comments, but be sure we'll head back through the YouTube and LinkedIn Live afterwards and make sure that we give you all a buzz on the way. We've got a few things to just quickly cover off, so just stay with us for a minute, Rosanne, and we'll come back to you. But look, guys, I know we mentioned it at the start of the show, but if you enjoyed what you saw today, please do support us. Please give us a like or subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. It really does make a difference, so thank you very much for that. And thank you for everyone that's joined us on LinkedIn Live today. George, I'm going to let the audience know about our next episode as well. I don't know if you want to just give a quick mention of that for the next one when I flash that up.
Let's do that.
All right. Tell us who we've got next, mate.
So we've got Mitchell Tan on is it the 30th? Sorry, I should be reading this.
It's the 31st, mate. It's Hogmanay. Yeah.
This is on Hogmanay, as we say in Scotland, or New Year's night, as you probably say in the rest of the world. So Mitchell, we actually spoke to about 3 weeks ago. Fascinating chap. He's built an interface for LinkedIn messages, and he's going to talk a little bit about bootstrapping a brand new business, the data elements of it, how his APIs work, and we're going to go a little bit under the hood as to how he's created this business and what it means for the data world, especially the organization of data in a usable format.
I think it's a really important episode. The LinkedIn inbox is not a fun place to be, and Mitchell is changing that. And as someone who's used it already, it really is making a difference. So if you spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, if your DMs are a mess, come and join us on the 31st, and Mitchell and we will guide you through that as well. So thank you very much. And we've not got a barcode for this yet, but we'll pass on the details to everyone after the show. So all that remains really is to say thank you so much, Rosanne, for popping along and giving us all your experience and insight, and the holidays are coming knowledge. We're very excited about all of that. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great. Thanks, George. It's fun.
Thank you, Rosanne. And it really has been an eye-opener. And one thing I'm going to take away is Martech's Law. That's brand new information for me.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And for me, it's the 5 C's. So fantastic stuff. that's a wrap for us, guys. Thank you very much for joining on the live streams. And Rosanne, thank you so much. And George and I will see you in 2 weeks for our next episode of the Data Mix. Thank you very much, everyone.
Great. Thank you.